I'm Todd Glass in New York City on a treadmill at the gym. Sorry for all the background noise. Watch my Netflix special, Act Happy.
You are not on an elliptical machine again, are you?
Yeah.
The last time I talked to you, you were on an elliptical. It was a little louder. I spent 8 hours removing the little clips out of the conversation.
I'm glad you told me that, because you know what? It does let me know, like, that, because a lot of people might not say it, but yeah, it's a good time for me because I know I'm going to be free.
I know.
So that's sort of what I do. But anyway, good talk.
I didn't hear it this time, so it was just the first time. And I don't really care anymore. It's a thing. It's a thing with you. The elliptical machine.
I think if you say it up front, people forgive you. You just can't play it without acknowledging. Hey, Todd's on the treadmill during this interview. It's a time when he has a lot of time, and it also lets me talk a lot longer.
Right.
But I think if you say it up front, people will forgive it. You just have to mention it.
You are listening to TMI for the week of May 21st, 2018.
So you're in Buffalo doing a few shows, and you have one more show tonight, is that right?
Look at you. You know your homework. Yes, I got 2 shows tonight.
Oh.
We did 2 Thursday, 2 Friday, and 2 Saturday.
Wow. When are you coming back to Toronto is my first question.
You know, I would imagine soon. You know, I always have fun there. Yeah. You know, I sort of take over the comedy bar and make it my own, and always a lot of fun. I haven't really been there. I have not been there since the Netflix special, so, you know, it should be good.
Yeah, well, I think you were here a year ago, almost exactly a year ago, at the comedy bar.
Yeah, so it's probably, you know, usually come there around every year and a half.
Yeah.
You know, seems about that, sometimes a year later.
Ian Atlas is the guy who books for that.
Yeah. That always makes it pleasant. No, I like it. I always like it there. Stay in whatever that hotel is. It's awesome.
Yeah.
And then just have a really good week.
Is there a difference between East Coast audiences and West Coast audiences?
You know, look, there are some differences sometimes. I don't know what it is, but maybe it's an appreciation for the arts. Overwhelmingly, I find in Canada, especially, well, maybe just because I've worked Toronto a lot, so maybe it's the same other places, but an appreciation for the arts. I never put it that way. I kept asking people, why are these audiences so good? You know, and it's like there's a ten of them, and I think an appreciation for the arts is there. It doesn't mean that they have to love. Appreciation for the arts doesn't mean, oh yeah, whatever they go to see, they love. No, it means when it's not their thing, they know there's still a civility that has to accompany it. And that means if you're in the first row or the third row, if the performer looks at you, you look at him with, you know, hey, I'm enjoying this, or, you know, and you don't have to, but you and I think that's what it might be, because, you know, when people don't enjoy something you're doing, I get it. There's things I go out and I don't enjoy. I'm not upset they don't enjoy me. I wish they did. But, so with all that said, though, there's still people that are not savvy to that. And I like explaining it that way because it doesn't make it sound like, you know, if you don't think I'm funny, then you must not like comedy. No, it doesn't mean that at all. But it means there's still a civility in which you can act. But with all that said, there's still people that don't, you know, they're not comedy savvy. I could lazily say morons, but they're everywhere. And it's basically, even though a cool city can be a boost to that great crowd, it's basically the way you train the audience. Because even though the comedy bar, you know, they're great crowds, you can tell they just come in. You can see the way you can tell a good crowd the way they're standing in line. You can look at them in line and go, they're going to be a good crowd, just the way they're acting. And the comedy bar has cultivated these really wonderful audiences. I'm sure there's other clubs that have done the same there. And there's other clubs, you know, comedy clubs, not comedy clubs that have just, it's whatever you accept from the audience. If you cultivate sloppy audiences, you'll get sloppy audiences.
So I've heard from some comedians that the worst audience member is the one sitting there with the arms crossed. So I have something to say about that. So that's probably me. And it's not because I'm not enjoying every second. It's actually because I am trying to rationalize intellectually the comedy and study why it's funny. And I'd have to be sitting there intently. I'm sure it looks like I'm not. Well, I'm just saying, beware of those guys with the arms crossed, because they're probably paying more attention than you might think.
Well, I'll split the difference with you and say that I do get that, and that happens a lot. But the people with the arms crossed that are just taking it in, and arms crossed, also, it doesn't always mean they're not enjoying it. Sometimes it's a comfortable way to sit. Maybe it's just you get comfortable in that way. It's like a cocoon for you. I get it. But I'll split the difference with that, because I think the ones that have their arm crossed, but it doesn't represent they're not having fun. And maybe they're not even smiling. They're just watching you. If you look at them, they will smile.
Right.
They will smile. And if they don't, and they're still watching the show, so you have your arms crossed, the performer makes eye contact when you don't smile, and but you are enjoying the show. If that exists, I'm sure it does. But guess what? That's something for them to learn, to go. If someone looks at you, if somebody looks at me walking down a hotel lobby in the hallway, and they make eye contact with me and nod at me, I smile at them. So, yeah, you can't just stare at someone for an hour and a half and expect them to think you're having a blast. So,
I'll get on the elevator, and people, not only are they closed off, I mean, they're often with their cell phones, but is that something that's changed in society, this willingness to engage strangers?
Well, I'm going to, keep this very short, because it's all I talk about, and I'm afraid that someone's going to hit me over the head with a shovel.
Right.
But I have a new joke in my act. It's sort of what I already talked about, but I go, what ruins a good, and by the way, what ruins a good conversation for me, and I'm addressing it with you, so it's not ruining a good conversation, because we can discuss it. But I mean, like, if I'm at a party and you can't really, you can't go, oh, you just ruined this conversation, you know what I mean? Is when you're having a conversation about, or whatever, it's not always social issues that people go, see, but I call them, they're these days people. They go, yeah, these days. No, I don't believe it. I know the phone is a big distraction. I get it. But no, I believe there were always people that engaged. Maybe they got in an elevator and they listened to their transistor radio. But I don't think, let's put it this way so I can split the difference here, a term I love to use. Okay, yeah, the phone is more of a distraction. It is. There's so much going on in that phone. But if people choose, if they're the type of people that are going to go through the line and talk to people at a grocery store, they will put their phone away. They'll be like, you know what? Even if they have nothing to say to the person behind the counter, if except a hello, how you doing? How's your day going? Maybe some idle chat. They'll go, you know what? I'm going through the line at the grocery store. Let me call you right back, like as soon as I get outside. And I've done that. So there's this picture that someone tweeted, and it's like 30 people waiting for the bus, and like it looks like it's 1950, and they're all reading the newspaper.
Okay.
It's a real picture.
Yeah.
And so, people always have found a way to disengage. So no, I don't believe that. I believe that it's like I said it before, that cell phones are like a knife. If you can use it to kill people, or you can use it to operate on people. So take a good look if you want to, shit on it, or go, no, there's definitely negative that comes from it, but there is a lot of positive too. So let's just put it into perspective.
In your act, how political are you getting these days?
I feel like I don't really get political. I enjoy talking about social issues. I think in the last 3 or 4 years, more than ever before. I don't really get that political. At least I don't think I do. I'm not. No, I don't think I'm real political. More social issues.
I'm talking about Trump a little bit, and so that's what I mean when I say political.
Well, I think you can talk about Trump. My friend said this. He said you can talk about Trump without. Maybe he's playing with words or semantics, but I don't think so. You can talk about Trump without talking politics, because I think most of the problems that I have with Trump probably aren't the trade agreements. Not that I agree with him, but I don't know that much about that. Or how he's going to end the deficit, or how most of my problems with him are social problems.
Yeah.
So you can really have a conversation about Donald Trump, what bothers you about him, without having a political conversation.
The thing about following it is, and if you were really following it, like the whole scandal each day. It changes every day, or if not every 2 days. So you're kind of like sifting water. And even if you wrote a joke about it, it would be old 2 days later.
Well, you don't have to talk about the specifics of each day. I think you can talk about Trump, his being overall. It's really the same thing, just in different ways. It's like if somebody says, if somebody's not polite, they never say thank you. They never say thank you at a restaurant. Yeah. They never say thank you when somebody opens a door for them. Yeah. They never say thank you when someone lets them go in traffic. They never say thank you to their significant other when they... So, yeah, you could talk about the specifics of it, or you can just go, yeah, this person never says thank you, and just talk about it on a broader spectrum. And I think that's probably, how, that I would discuss Trump. But, the bigger issue is getting into the nitty-gritty. The bigger thing that I enjoy talking about, feel it's necessary to talk about, we all have, my new favorite thing to talk about is not people that voted for Trump. I'm even willing to move past that, but people that are still supporting Trump. Mm-hmm. And I always feel this. I know I have some friends that did it, and it's very much affecting our friendship. And I talked about it a lot, even with a friend of mine that's a couples counselor, because I want to be on the right side of this. I might, I thought maybe he'd say, no, Todd, you can't give up a 25-year friendship because somebody voted for Donald Trump. And the question is, can't you have someone in your life that voted for Donald Trump, not be crazy about it, but still have a friendship?
Well, this is very interesting.
Family. Meaning, yes, if I had a stepfather who voted for Trump, or my brother, I got to go home for Christmas. I got to go home for the holidays. So for family, and I have it in small aspects of my family, but as far as close dear friends, no.
I remember in the 70s being at a turkey dinner with the family around, and the younger half of the family being liberal and the older conservative grandparents. And I it was in the sort of Nixon, just after the Nixon era, Canadian or American politics notwithstanding. And I think people have been struggling with that for a long time, being able to coexist in the same space.
Well, look, the bottom line is, I'm sure if my friend, which I'm getting ready to deal with it, because it has affected our friendship. A friend of mine I'm getting ready to have a talk. Yeah. And from a very loving point of view. But I think the thing that my friend said to establish first is, do you have any deal breakers? Say to them. So do you have any deal breakers to my friend? It might not be this, but, someone, your friend you love dearly. Let's say it's not even Trump, but something they would do. Now, obviously, there's a ton of things that close friends do, and you water under the bridge, and people have had people that dear friends in their life that voted for a different president, but they still remain friends without even blinking an eye. But maybe it's because it wasn't as egregious as it is now. So yes, you can have dear friends that have voted for different people and still be close friends. I've done it. I'm proof I can do it. But what I have to establish with my friend first, my friend was telling me, helping me get ready for this conversation, is let them lead. Do you have any deal breakers? You love a friend for 25 years, but they did something that you just have to go, we're going to have to part ways for now. I still love you. I still won't talk horribly about you. There's so many wonderful memories that will never go away. But this is a big deal. Let them answer. And they'll probably say, yeah, like I guess if I found out a friend was, drinking and driving with his kids in the car and he wouldn't stop, I couldn't continue a friendship. Or no, he was going to come over to my house for a party without his kids and drink and drive. Or if I found out someone was... So let him establish that first, and then go, well, look, you might not agree with my deal breaker, but we now establish we both have deal breakers. And when I say deal breaker, I don't mean you go, our friendship's over. The way my friend said it is, he goes, well, sometimes you have to let friendships drift apart. And that's what I mean by deal breaker. I can't have this person in my life. To me, someone that still supports Trump, they don't realize the negativity and the pain that he inflicts on people because of the president, the leader of the free world, his views. So, and by the way, and I'm almost done, I love this part because it doesn't mean I'm right. And that's what I'm going to explain to my friend. We don't have to sit on the phone right now and go, but he did this and you did that. We're past that. The reason we are probably having to part ways, and it's sad, is for that reason alone. We will not have a civil discussion on the phone. It's too hard at this point. We've tried it already 3 or 4 times, and it's been very civil, but I disagree. So we're not going to agree on it. We feel horribly different. So we might just have to let this friendship go.
Even those things that you disagree on, it can always be reasoned down to it's fake news, or he said this, or he's always contradicting himself. The facts are always in question. There's no truth to actually have a disagreement over, because it's always hearsay or corrected the next day or contradicted a week later.
Not being flippant at all, just to make my point really clear.
Yeah.
And by the way, I think you have to discuss it at first. I've had with my friends in Philadelphia, in a very calm, like if anybody overheard it, they'd be like, wow, that was 2 people that really disagree with each other, but they have them intelligent and they listened. And that's hard for me sometimes. I remember, listen, shut up and listen. And I did. But now we're past that. So I don't mean that in a flippant way. I mean, at this point, I'm not interested, or do I feel it will serve any purpose to sit on a phone, or when, let's say I'm in Philly and we get together, it'll probably be over the phone, and go, oh, well, why did he do that? No, that's in the past. Now the reason this has to part ways is because we're not going to be on the same page.
Yeah.
And, it's like if you have a friend that, whatever it is, the problem with giving analogies to people is they're never good. Because whatever analogy you give them, or a comparison, like, hey, would you be friends with someone that did this? They never think it's a good comparison. So there lies the problem. You're saying, when I tell you, well, would you be friends with a friend that was in a white supremacist group? Not the Ku Klux Klan, they don't wear, but they're a group. They join once a week and they talk about, and they go, well, that's a bad comparison. And you go, well, it's not perfect, but I feel he perpetuates the same type of hate and helps support groups like that. So we don't have to discuss that anymore. We have to part ways like civil adults going, we're not getting on the same page. Proof of it, when I gave you an analogy of the type of damage I think you do by supporting someone like that, you don't think it's a good comparison. I'm willing to accept that, not go back and forth for an hour. Yes, it is a good comparison. No, it is. I'm willing to step back and go, there lies our problem. We need to part ways because you don't think that's a good comparison. I think it is. It's not dead on, but it's good. It's good. You're supporting someone that I think perpetuates a lot of hate. And I can't hang out with someone like that when I see them. I'm not excited to. And it's not like I go, oh, I'm so excited to see my friend Mark. Oh, I can't because he voted for Trump and still supports him. No, I don't crave being around him.
Yeah.
If I had a friend for 25 years and I found out like they don't think white people should marry black people, sometimes that happens. You know someone for a long time and you're like, what? I couldn't just hang around them. And by the way, I don't know when history writes itself if I'll be that embarrassed. I'm not doing it in a disgusting, oh, fuck him. No, I'm doing it almost like when 2 people are married for 30 years. And how about people that are married for 30 years and they manage, even when they just, it got bad at the end, but they managed to civilly part ways. I'm always in awe of that. It's hard, but I'm doing it that way. Every time someone mentions my friend, I'm not going to go, yeah, fucking idiot. No, we had a lot of great memories, and hopefully down the road it will, but I don't think it will, because I think, and here's what I think. I think if they were a fly on the wall, I'd like to represent them well. I'm referencing somebody, he'll never hear this podcast, but if he did, I know that he's not crazy about everything that Trump does. I get it. There's things that Trump does that he's like, God damn it, I wish he'd stop tweeting, or God damn it, can't he shut his mouth? I get it. I really get it. They're not saying, oh, he does some little things that are wrong, but no, they're saying, no, he does some big things that I wish he'd stop. But overwhelmingly, they're saying that they like him. And they're saying, even with all the bad things he does, he must be doing something for them, I think. Obviously. He must be doing something for them. And I have a guess at what that is, but I don't have to guess it, because if I guess wrong, then that starts a whole nother thing, which isn't necessary. So I'm going to leave it at, he's doing something you like. He's doing something you like. Because if he's doing all those things you don't like, you're still supporting him. You're going, no, there's some shit I don't like. But guess what? I still think he's the man. Yeah. And that, I just have to part ways.
Yeah, one nice maybe example of a sort of deal breaker might be the gun situation. So there was another school shooting yesterday, And after the last major school shooting, the younger people came out and they booked Saturday television and had giant rallies. And soon after, Trump was all going to do something about it. And here we are back at square one because of his endorsement by the NRA. So, I mean, right there, that's sort of a deal breaker. I mean, there's so many deal breakers.
What I love about saying, what is your deal breaker?
Yeah.
Maybe this is a little flippant. I mean, once somebody else establishes a deal breaker,
yeah.
Now, the only reason this plan would backfire on me is that they go, nope, I don't have any deal breakers. And I went, what if you found out that somebody murdered somebody? And they go, nope. I know that's egregious, and I don't list that one because it's not a fair example. But if they said no, you'd be like, oh, shit, you really don't think there's deal breakers. But most people, look, you can be having a disagreement with someone, but you're still both honest with each other. Of course you can do that. So if most people are honest, they're going to be like, yeah, I don't think this is a deal breaker. And you can say, no, I get that. But what is your deal breaker? So if they don't agree with your deal breaker, you can go, well, look, we're not that far off. I mean, you've admitted you have deal breakers. You just said it. You said you could be friends with someone for 25 years. There'd be a lot they could do that you wouldn't agree with, but you could still stay close friends. But there would be something. So we're both not that far apart. We just have different deal breakers. But how angry can you be at me? You've just said you have some deal breakers. So you can't be shocked as shit that I have some deal breakers. We're not that different. We just have different deal breakers.
Well, here we are into a year and a half of Trump. And when I think in the beginning of the Trump era, some comedians were saying that they were getting bad reactions from their audiences by getting too political or anti-Trump. So here we are a year and a half later. Has the landscape changed? Do you notice that people are more or less judgmental when they're, as audience members, on the content that's being...
I mean, like I said, I don't really... I mean, I think maybe 10 times since he's been in office, I've mentioned his name on stage.
Yeah.
My joke is so peripheral that
Yeah.
they don't care about it, so I don't really know.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I would say, I don't know. I don't know. I would imagine it depends what club you're at.
Right.
And what the audience consists of. But hey, look, as long as the joke is funnier than preachy, which, by the way, I've made the mistake of being preachier than funny. I get it. Not on my podcast. Then you're allowed to talk whatever you want. But but in your act. So, hey, if they don't agree with it, hey, who cares?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not fun because you want to kill on stage and you want to do well, but you know what crowd you're in front of usually. And if you bring it up and they're like, boo, But it's funny because that really in lies when they all go boo. Like, again, people that are smart know that your voice is your silence at a comedy club, not yelling. What power do you have? You have a lot of power. Silence is the death of a comedian. So really, I think when people don't agree and then they're just silent, that's a lot of power. And if they knew that, they would know you don't have to boo, you don't have to groan. Your silence is very powerful. And if that's not enough for you,
what's it like looking out at an audience member who's, distracted? Like, and I don't mean on their phone, I mean just that whatever it is, whether they're paying the check or they're looking at the salt shaker, they're not paying any attention at all. That must be worse than crossed arms.
It's hard for me. It is hard to me, and I'm still learning. When it's paying the check, as long as they're quiet, that I can get past because I know they have to do it. And a lot of clubs, maybe they won't drop the check in the first row or two, which is beautiful. Even clubs that drop checks. But other than that, it's so difficult for me. If I see someone lean over and talk to somebody for 5 seconds, no, that doesn't bother me. Someone that goes, hey, that was like you, blah, blah, blah. But it's hard. But I'm really trying to not let it distract me too much, especially if I can't hear them. But when I hear them, I just, the good news is I work a lot of really good clubs that are on it. So what I try to do is have a signal with the club owner or the staff, the security or the door guys. That way I don't have to be the bad guy. And I forget to tell them that in the beginning of the week sometimes. So you get a table of people, they're just disengaged. They get disengaged. Because, look, nobody's talking if they're engaged. Well, maybe they are if they're talking about the joke. But no less, I have a sign, and that means, these people, that's the best way for me to do it. That way I don't have to go, shut up, But usually it's great. That's the good news is that, like, most clubs that I work, whether it's the Helium chain or, Comedy on State here in Acme Comedy Club or Comedy Bar, they're really good. And people overwhelmingly are awesome. They really are. It's amazing how many great crowds can get together and just be, just beautiful.
Can you tell me a little bit about how you constructed your special Act Happy? It's where it's filmed, it's not a venue that exists. You recreated a venue. And
so funny you say that, because
yeah,
a friend of mine said that looks like a place you want to go,
right?
But it doesn't exist.
I know. That's where I was going to go with it. Why aren't these clubs all like that thing you constructed? Am I wrong here? But it was in a giant blank space, and you literally created.
Yeah, it was in a very intimate space, but we still had to recreate it.
Oh.
But it's funny you say that, because I knew what I wanted,
right.
But it does exist. And I'll tell you where. It doesn't exist a lot, but that's why this is, I think, a good story. So after I had my special aired, a jazz club reached out to me in San Antonio called Jazz Texas, and the owner said, I reached out to you because your special looked like my club.
Right.
Now look, just because the special looks like my club, and it did. I went online. I'm like, oh my God, it's like blue. All the room's lit in a deep blue. You walk into a sea of blue. Picture just a blue room. All the lights are gel blue. The lights over the audience, the lights over the bar, and then a sea of candles on every table, black tablecloths, and it's a jazz club. And I went in a night early. I went in on a Saturday night, and there's a 13-piece band playing on the stage, 120-seat room. And the owner was there. He goes, yeah, you're going to get the piano player, the bass player, and the drummer. That's who we'll have play for you. And there were drinks and food. And I thought, why did it seem like a theater? Because at a theater, the theater's better because, there's no drinks or food. So, it's more. But no, it proved, and I think the reason to your question is why it doesn't exist. I don't know. Because here's a place that serves food and drinks. Now, here's why I think. Because let's say the good comedy clubs, on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being the best comedy club, let's say a lot of them are 8s. And that's a really good club. That's a club that the staff is quiet. They can serve drinks, but they know how to. They scatter the checks maybe when they drop them. Let's say they're an 8. This guy was a 10, and I know why. Because even though there were drinks and food served, there was no food served in the first 2 rows once the show started. I didn't ask him that. He goes, oh, I couldn't have people eating food while you were performing. If there are some dinners that are gone out late in the 3rd or 4th row, okay. But they'd be, silent. We bring them over very quietly. And there was no check drop in the 1st row. And they scattered the rest of the room. And the way the lighting was. And he ran it. I went, wow, that was like at a theater, a dinner theater. I guess that's a dinner theater. And I don't know why. It was that a lot of clubs are 8s, but that was a 10. And the way the show started, it was like everything I want to do, but he did it, and it was called Jazz Texas. And God, it was so much fun, and I don't know why. It's very frustrating to me.
This club in Toronto, I think it's defunct now, but for decades, I think it was the oldest jazz club in the world in terms of it staying in the same place, and it was called George's Spaghetti House. And it was a darkly lit place, and they had Mo Kaufman play once every 3 weeks, and it was a serious jazz venue. And you could hear the knives hitting the plates and the sawing through tough steak and stuff. But it was fabulous jazz. But the way it was lit and the really professional service, the whole thing did kind of... So when I saw your special, I kind of wanted to see some food on the tables. Maybe the knives clinking and stuff would be good.
Well, I didn't mind the clinking of glasses, but for a special, I didn't want food just because they're walking. They're still walking around the crowd. You're getting crowd shots. You don't want a waitress leaning over a table,
Yeah.
So I didn't mind just the drinks. There were drinks on the table. There were drinks. But like I said, at this club here, he goes, I put a lot of thought into the food that I serve. He goes, I don't make any less money. This is when I don't understand it. When it doesn't make you less money. If I see a club that does something, I go, they make more money doing it that way. I don't agree, but I understand. He goes, I don't make any less money when I think of my menu, what's easy, what's quiet, doesn't involve too much activity. The joke you said, you don't want people opening up lobster,
Yeah.
What's easy? What can, if a dinner does go out during the show because we had a busy night and we got to serve 15 dinners during the show, it's not in the first two rows. And the other people, it's quiet. We don't make a big deal about it. We don't bring it over to the table in a tray. Everything comes out quietly. Shh, you get your dinner. It's just, there is a way to do it. And he goes, I don't make any less money serving things that are easier to serve. He goes, not dropping the check in the first row, it doesn't cost, once you figure out how to do it, I don't make any less money doing it. Yeah. So all the things that he does, he goes, having the room dark, and all the waitresses had lights on their trays, like little clip-on lights so they could see, and it doesn't cost me anymore. He goes, I don't make any less. He goes, so I just think, he said, it comes down to a love for the show, and you can serve drinks and food and do it great. And I don't know. Maybe I wish I could put my stamp on a club.
Do you have another special in the works?
No, I don't even know if I called Netflix and said, hey, I want to do another one in a year if I could. Yeah. But I like to, if I had my choice, because it makes traveling easier for me and enjoying my act more, every 3 years is enough for me, because and by that time my act has turned over and I've enjoyed it. I don't do my special and then go out on the road and do a new hour. Right. All I hope is that by the time somebody sees me, if it's a year later, that I have 30% new material. And to me, that's like, it's a weird way to look at it, but it's the way I looked at it before I did comedy. Like, I would go see a comedian, and I remember, I'd be like, hey, did he have new stuff? And I'd be like, yeah, he has like a pretty big chunk of new stuff, meaning 30% in that area if I had to put a number on it. And that's a big chunk of the old stuff, but it's a nice dose of new stuff. That's what I think I do. But if someone watched the special, even if they watched the special today, came to saw me tonight, the special's 3 months old, I would still even if it was the same, which it wouldn't be, but even the same jokes are different. I've changed them. So even the same jokes are by this time different anyway.
What do you think of all these shows? Comedians in cars getting coffee, and I'm Dying Up Here, Crashing. There's been a Gilbert Gottfried documentary, which is quite interesting, and Chandling, a 2-part long sort of documentary on Chandling's life. Are we seeing too much of How to Make the Sausage, or is this all just good for the whole business?
Look, I think you can tell by talking to me for a while. I'm a big believer of, yes, there's a lot of stuff on television right now. There's a lot of stuff available for people. And sometimes it's hard to sift through. Yeah. I get it. But guess what? The country's a big country, and sometimes it decides to go, like, should I go to Europe? If you want to see the world, it become overwhelming if you want to travel the world. Where do I want to see? Oh, my God, there's so much in the States. It's overwhelming when you think about, if I want to visit the world and see the world, it's like, what it can. I bet it is for certain people. Like, oh, my God, I want to see this world. But guess what? You figure it out, and it's worth it. There's a lot of programming on right now. And, yeah, there's probably a lot of bad stuff. But guess what? There's also a lot of great stuff. And even people but I always find you either lead with the positive or the negative. Now, I'm not saying always lead with the positive. Sometimes there's no positive. You try to get it out of it. But with television, it's pretty easy to lead with the positive. And the way you do that is, what do you spend more time talking about? Because when I tell people, but there's a lot of good stuff too, they'll be like, oh yeah, I know. I know me. I know No, you're right. Even by their fruition. They'll go, oh no, there's a lot of good stuff. But they lead with, there's so much shit out there. There is. But there's also a lot of great, new, different programming. So if you really want to partake in it, you'll figure out a way to watch the cream.
Yeah. Well, I'm a big fan of the Crashing.
You know what? I did a little episode. Well, I actually did. I did a little part of that. But it got edited out. Oh. Hopefully not because of my acting. But what a fun set to be on.
Really?
And yeah, it was really fun.
Yeah.
They were so nice. I love when you're on a set. I get nervous on sets. I'm not.
Well, all those acting. People though.
The directors and the writers. There's so many people you don't know.
Okay.
But they were just so. It was just a really great vibe on that set. Like, I was overwhelmed how loving it was. Like, every single person was really loving. And I've watched only 2 episodes of that show, and I really liked it.
You got to catch up. That's a good one. That's a real good one. But
so yeah.
So another kind of thing that I'm always kind of interested in is this idea. To start off with, there's the statement. Let's see, I don't see you doing a roast battle. You're not that mean kind of guy. Am I wrong?
I'm a little. My skin is a little too thin to. I would get crushed if it was. Now you know what? Maybe if it was my dear friends roasting me. Right. Someone pointed that out.
Yeah.
They go, "What if it was your dear friend?"
Yeah.
And you know what? I went, "Oh, I never looked at it from that perspective." Then maybe I could do it, but I would never choose it. But it's too. But I've gone to. It's just you know somebody that doesn't like you goes over the line. I mean, you saw some of the roasts like Chevy Chase. I mean, even though he was probably a dick to a lot of people, it was still painful to watch. It was like, but I will admit I've gone to the roast battle in Los Angeles at the Comedy Store. Mm-hmm. It's almost a parody of a roast. They have the and it was enjoyable. But for me, it was very enjoyable. I was like this crazy world tenor into it. But for me, no, I couldn't. I would get crushed. I would, if somebody just went after my jugular and it would hurt me. And so I would prefer, it's funny you asked that because my manager, the way this conversation came up, he was, what if you got a new show on Comedy Central? But they go, Todd, we want you to do a roast. We want to roast you to introduce you to a new audience, through a bigger platform. I go, oh my God. I said, and that's when I said, well, if it was my friends. Okay. If it was my friends roasting me.
To paint a little picture here. So Jeff Ross and Anthony Jeselnik versus, like Jim Gaffigan and Seinfeld. And so the bottom line here is there's a nice table, there's a mean table, there's a clean table, and there's a dirty table of comedians. That's true, right? And the clean comedians are the nice ones, all right? And the dirty ones are the mean?
No.
No?
No.
Okay.
No. I mean, dirty, you mean vulgar?
In their acts, vulgarity? Yeah. Ones who work clean, ones who work dirty. Yeah?
Well, I don't like to call it, I know what you mean probably, but just to clarify, when you say clean comedians, right. I think even like Jim Gaffigan and let's say Brian Regan, they just happen to not use vulgarity, right. Or maybe, they still have guts. You can not curse and maybe not talk about politics, but still have guts and still be funny in your bones. That's what Brian Regan and Jim Gaffigan are to me. And they happen to be, hey, I could bring my mom to this if I wanted, or I could bring my kids to this if they liked him. But that's just a secondary thing. So when I think of clean comedians, that's how they book themselves. I'm not really a fan of that. But no, now look, I'm not talking about people that punch the wrong group. Let's take that off the table and keep it a clean discussion. I'm not talking about that. People that are vulgar but just use vulgarity to be mean to a group of people that are already having a difficult time in the real world. I'm not talking about that. Yeah. But they use vulgarity, whether it's Richard Pryor or whether it's, comedians of today that might, use vulgarity, Eddie Pepitone, but vulgarity in a brilliant way. No, it's so funny. Comedians that might be on stage could be the sweetest people off stage, and maybe because that's why, because they have a vent. They can vent, they can express themselves. It's like I'm not into fighting, boxing or punching a bag, but it's like when you see people like that are punching a bag, and maybe they used it to get their aggression out, but are just the most gentle, sweet people. So no. There's and by the way, there's a lot of people that happen to be clean on stage and are sweet off stage. Of course, I'm not saying though, but you know what? Sometimes there's guys that are just on stage clean and nice and vanilla, and they're real, pricks off stage. But it's all over the gambit. I'm not implying that it's a clean explanation, but no, people by no means does that. There's some people that are, really aggressive on stage and really kind and fun to hang out with.
I wonder if in the future, like I can't see you in Buffalo tonight. In the future, I should be able to pay cover or ticket price and see you any time in the future on YouTube. Do you think that'll ever happen?
I think it would be by the choice of the performer. There have been things like that. I think for a while, Funny or Die was like, oh no, they were chopping it up. They were chopping it up. I think that would be by the performer. Maybe there's something about being there that.
Yeah.
If maybe there's something different about being there. But if a performer wanted to do like, hey, by the way, you're doing all week. Do you want to do one show and have it go live, and then you'll make profits off of that? Yeah, that should happen probably. That could be really cool.
Well, even if it wasn't live, just so that, people could see it. I mean, there's probably not a huge amount of money.
Maybe you make it live.
I was just saying in the future, in some Jetson future. Maybe
by the way, that doesn't even have to be the Jetson future. There'd probably be, what I always say, you have an idea like that, there's probably 30 ways to do it wrong, but there's one way or two ways to do it right.
Yeah.
So I think that could be done right. And obviously by choice of performer could go, no, I don't want to do that. Whatever his reason would be, doesn't have to explain it to anybody. But I don't know, if I was at a club, I'm hypothetically going, I would probably want to do it at a favorite club, because then I could, if I'm going to, if they're going to, hey, when do you want to do that? I wouldn't do it at a club I'm not crazy about, but, it's an okay club, but I'm not crazy. I'm going to pick my favorite club. But let's say I was at Acme or, well, in this case, the Comedy Bar in Toronto. And they said, hey, you want to do Saturday night? Your show goes live, and, hey, people can buy a ticket. And you get a percentage of that ticket.
Mm-hmm.
After going over some circumstances and how that would be. But I almost would want to try it with, nope, you got to get a ticket that night, maybe. Or maybe you have, 3 days, to do it. I wanted to, just make it easy. If they want to see your show, and then you could tweet it out. Hey, by the way, if you want to watch me live, I'll be at the... And then everybody from London to New Jersey to Florida to Canada to Alaska could buy a ticket and watch your show. And you could even reference it on stage, go...
But that's kind of the tragedy of live performances, that if you're not there, they kind of disappear into the ether, right? I mean, and this way, at least they're kind of preserved. That's
exactly.
The way live is.
I mean, yes, there's truth to that. And there's nothing like live. There's nothing like live performance. Did you start pitching that? Did you pitch that idea to me and then go negative on it?
Well... No, I mean, no, if I'm not being negative. I am saying that if you don't record it, it is kind of lost into the universe.
But that could be good, too.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, there's other stuff online. I mean, stuff ends up online chopped up.
Yeah.
There could be a club or that you shoot your set and then you take 8 minutes of it. So I don't think it's lost. Maybe one live full performance will never be seen again, but there's certainly content that you have other than your Netflix special or other than your Hulu special or whatever special you have, other than other content, they're still chopped up. You can still have moments of your performance live. And that's what I think Funny or Die was doing. They would shoot you. I remember once at the Acme Comedy Club, they had a mounted camera too in the room. And they controlled it, I think, basically from their headquarters in San Francisco. I'm almost positive. And then they would chop it up, and then they sent you the chopped up clips. Here's 6 clips that we were going to use. They're both, one is 2 minutes, one is 4 minutes, and you could go to them. You know what? Use these 3, not these 3. And they never argued. They said, "Cool, got you."
You're coming to Montreal, I hear.
I am coming to Montreal. I'm coming to do the podcast one night and then shows every other night. And I have a little band with me, so it should be fun.
And what's the venue in Montreal? That's a big one. Is it Just for Laughs? What is it?
I don't know. I think I'm doing, always, I might do one bigger show, maybe opening up for an act at a 3,000-seat theater. Then I'll do my podcast in a little room, and then the shows. I'm not sure. I think they might be different places every night.
What's the plan for the podcast episode in Montreal? Do you have an idea yet?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'll put it together probably. I'll pick a comedian that's there. That would be fun. And I'm bringing 2 people from the podcast, John Brian Wagner, who does the board, and maybe one other person. And then we'll use local comedian. I'll have a local band, and should be fun.
So you do the podcast, the Todd Glass Show, and it's been on
6.
So it's been on for 6 years.
Yeah.
Has it?
I love it, and it's really. Go ahead.
Yeah. Do you have to do it? What if you didn't do it?
Good question. You know the answer to that.
You've got to do it.
Tell you the truth.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
And I really do. It's made my comedy better.
Right.
It's every week when I do it. And I think what makes me love it is I made, indirectly a very smart choice up front. In the beginning, I thought, you have a guest every week. That's the way podcasts are. You do have a guest, and then you have to book a guest. And then if you can't get a guest, And even though if I had, especially the more high profile the guests, the more that you get new audience members. You know, if you, let's say I have Jim Gaffigan on my show. Okay, well, let's say 20,000 people because Jim Gaffigan's on my show listen. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You might not keep them all, but it's who you do keep. Who comes over to hear Jim and goes, I like this show. Okay, it is good. But I decided I didn't want every week the pressure of booking a guest. So what I do, and this is what I think makes it pure joy for me, sometimes I have a guest, and that's awesome. Sometimes they're guests that nobody knows, and I introduce them. That's how a lot of my audience got introduced to Rory Scovel or Alan Strickland Williams, or even people like Chris James. Give a little throw out to a Toronto guy. They're on the show, and they get introduced to comedians. They're like, I never knew who Eddie Pepitone was, so I listened to your show. Or Liza Skinner that was on my show, or Jen Kirkman, people like that. They're like, I didn't know Jan. I heard, and now they'll go see them live when they're in their city. But when you have a bigger act, yes, but I don't have the pressure of that, and that's would have been the only part that made it suck. Yeah. That every week, and then they cancel. So I do about half the time I have a guest, and half the time I do a family show. And I really love the podcast. The studio is just, it's weird, but I haven't lost it. It's not lost on me how cool the studio is. It just turned out. It's like a fort. We go in there. We all say we got podcast hangover. It's like being on ecstasy in a weird way. Like you get in there and you go to this place that's so tranquil in there. It's so special. And then when you open the barn door at the end of the night and leave, you're like, wow, that was crazy. And you have to go through almost what was it? Not detox, but decompression as you get out of that studio.
I don't know if I'm going to keep this in, but so here's my experience. There's a day and a half after of self-loathing. Is that just me? Am I doing something wrong?
Oh no, I get podcast hangover all the time.
Yeah.
But I think that's what I call it. When you say something or bare your soul. Yeah. I don't get it all the time, but let's say out of 100% of doing the podcast. And by the way, it doesn't have to be socially. If it's a social issue that I talked about, I go, did I do that justice? I don't need to just talk about something unless I brought clarity to it. That's what makes me feel better when I go, no, just talking about something. Did you bring clarity to it? Did you express yourself well? It's why I don't smoke pot anymore when I do topic-oriented shows, which I drop on Monday, which sometimes I do them every 3-4 months. Whenever I'm feeling it, we go in on a different day. And yeah, but it could be a silliness that you tapped into. Yeah. Yes, I get podcast hangover a lot, but still, and I love it. Because you know what it means? It means you bared your soul, and that's good. And it sounds, whenever you get emails, it reminds me of an old Mr. Rogers quote. If it's mentionable, it's manageable. We had all these things going on. People dealt with depression years ago. People had things. People had weird, tics they had. If we didn't have it back then, really, if we really didn't have it, let's say no, there was no depression back then. There were no, like I say, peanut allergies back 50 years ago. There was no depression. There was no, people didn't have tics. There weren't people that felt they were in the wrong body as far as their sex goes. If that was true, I'd go, well, let's go back. Let's learn why they didn't have that back then. Holy shit, would I want to go back and learn? But that's not the case. They had it. They didn't know what to do with it. They felt they were in their own. A lot of times they went crazy. So when you mention things, Mr. Rogers said, if you mention it, it's manageable. So whenever I think, why did I need to mention that? I ask myself that. What did I need to tell everybody that personal thing about me for? And then the answer is because then somebody else always goes, oh, I deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I tell myself whenever you bare your soul. It's good for you. It's good for other people.
Well, it's always entertaining, your show. So, for example, on a recent episode, you did a bit of a skit about airline pilots. And I've thought a little bit about, the comedy of what you could do with airline pilot announcements on a flight. But in your recent episode, you had then the flight attendant make an announcement that somewhat contradicted the pilot's announcement, and then the head stewardess might have made an announcement, and by the end of it, we heard from the air marshal. Yeah. I mean, it's like, and that's kind of, this is what you do. It's like you take things that are on the tip of people's tongues, but they don't quite realize it's on their tongues. And comedians then take that and say it, and the result is always, why didn't I think of that? How couldn't I have not thought of that? And that's what you're always doing.
And then, well, thank you. I think that's a good thing. And then people end up doing it because, like I meet people after shows and friends, and I know what it's like when I would hear bits growing up on the radio. And you do them at your house. They create bits. They're like, oh, they do bits from the show. And, I think if I had to analyze what we do, I think when you're little, you're silly.
Right.
Go look at like some 14-year-old boys or girls, 15 years old at the mall, and I always think it's like, look at how much fun they're having. And kids don't call it bits, but that's what kids do. They play, and they do bits. They do not play on I'm not talking about playing, on swing, that type of playing, or on their bike, or on their skateboard, that type of playing, of course. But I'm talking about doing bits.
Yeah.
They don't call them bits.
Yeah.
They play. They're like, hey, what if you did this? You do that, and I'll do that. And they laugh, and then they do it again. That's really what we're doing on the show, And I think that's what I love about comedy, and that's why I love hanging out with comedians. I really do. I've said it before. I'll always say it again. I don't want to wait later in life to go, I really should have not taken that for granted. I never take it for granted. I feel like I'm very lucky to be able to hang out with comedians. And I think one of the things that I love about most comedians is they, even with all their problems and all their tics and all their things, I think overwhelmingly they're decent people. I know by the way when I introduce them to my family how kind they are to them, and they can be soft and they can be gruff and they can be sweet and they can be silly, and I need someone like that. So comedy, that's what I think it does. It lets you keep a childlike wonder. And one night when I was doing a show and the audience wasn't into it, it was okay. It wasn't the worst show in the world. It really never is the worst at this point in your career. Well, there once in a while, but it rarely is. It's just not what you like. I asked this drummer. He was just a drummer that was playing for me in Tempe. And I said, I don't want to just go, they were dumb. That's lazy. They're not dumb. What was it? And he goes, your show involves, as an adult, to have some childlike wonder. And he goes, they've lost it. And I thought he really said that kindly as opposed to calling people stupid. Because they've lost that childlike wonder. And as a comedian, you don't have to lose it. And to me, that's just precious to me.
I've always wondered about comedians that bring activism, and they use the stage as a place to really just sort of vent their issues. Now, of course, that's not always funny. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it isn't.
Let me just say something.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No.
Let me interject real quick, and then I'll let you finish.
Yeah.
Let's say when comedians do it at the best, like not just, I agree. You're doing comedy. So the best way to change someone's opinion when you have a political opinion is, look, the people that don't agree with you, no matter how funny it is, aren't going to pretty much agree. But it's always better if it's funnier than preachy, like I said before. So let's say, like out there, the comedians that are, go finish your question. I'm sorry.
Well, no, I'm fascinated by the idea of that, in any presentation, even if it's at a corporate venue or whether it's at a demonstration, comedy is very important in getting the message out. It's the sugar that makes the medicine go down. And I just am wondering often about celebrities who seem to sidestep issues. And
I think you should do whatever you. I think you should do whatever you want, and that's why I say, like, whenever someone like, Jay Leno, he's sort of notorious. And look, I think I'm reading into it, right? And I think if he heard this in his gut of guts, he would know I'm right. Whenever he goes, Johnny never gave his political point of view. Johnny, you never knew where he was. Well, he's saying that because that's what he did, and he's trying to say, well, Johnny did it. That's right, because he's the holy grail of what's sort of right. And he's sort of saying, I lean towards doing what Johnny did. But you know what? That was a different day, and who knows? Who knows? Maybe Johnny wanted to do it, and he couldn't. I bet there were times when they go, no. So I think you should do what you want. And most people, even on Fox, when they go, why are all these celebrities weighing in? Even if they're celebrities I don't like, they always do that. But then they have their celebrities. I've seen, they get Ted Nugent on there. They get the guy from the butter commercials, Fabio, on there. Any celebrity they can get, they get. So I think they should do whatever they want. And maybe what happens is you realize that you can use your power for good things.
Yeah.
Now, when I see celebrities saying things I don't agree with, of course I don't agree with, but I never, ever make the mistake of, maybe I've made it and I stopped myself, to be very honest, of going, shut up, go back to doing that. Because then I'm mirroring what I don't like. I'm mirroring what I don't like. Look, you have a platform. You're not doing, people, decent, kind people make some wrong calls sometimes. But I get it. They'll say, oh, why don't you just shut up? But look, wait, don't you tell everybody you can? If you disagree with something, don't you, for this, whatever group of people in your life, even if you're not a comic or an actor, don't you talk to them? Don't you express yourself? Well, they have a bigger platform. So, the difference is, yes, I get it. If you have an actor you really like, that's when it probably annoys people the most, when there's an actor they love. And now that actor won't shut up about something they disagree with. All right, that sucks. But you know what? On the late night platform, and I might be wrong, if somebody expressed to me their point of view and I went, oh, I see what you mean, but I get it. There's people that might say, oh, Jimmy Kimmel and all these people and Colbert and the only guy you could really watch. There's not somebody you can really watch on television late at night if you're a Trump supporter. But you know what? Sorry, because you know what? I think what a lot of people liked about, I know we sort of merged into talking about late night television because I think it merges. A lot of people, that say, back then, like John, I think back then the reason people miss people like David Letterman or Johnny Carson, for people that grew up with that, is because not only because they thought it was funny, because everybody misses a show that's real funny and it goes off the air. You're like, oh, I'm sorry to see it go off the air. But when it's a talk show, it puts you to bed. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why when those people go off the air, it's very emotional. I get it. And I was that way with Letterman. But guess what? It's a different day. And what you need maybe to comfort you is you can't not talk about it. So maybe what helps put you to bed is watch your favorite talk shows. There's a lot of people that aren't Trump supporters. That doesn't mean they all watch the same show. A non-Trump supporter. Doesn't mean they all watch the same show. You can be a non-Trump supporter and watch Kimmel. You can be a non-Trump supporter and watch Colbert. You can be a non-Trump supporter and watch, I'm forgetting, basically know what I'm saying.
All these shows are anti-Trump. Yeah. I mean, they're all making fun of Trump.
Yeah. So you might whatever one you pick, maybe that's what you need to put you to bed. There's so much chaos in the world right now. Yeah. And to maybe flip over and watch them and they don't discuss it, because some people go, wouldn't that be the best thing? Just let me forget about it.
Right.
Maybe that's a little unrealistic. Maybe what the same thing Johnny did back then was just go to bed. Maybe to go to bed now, you have to turn somebody on that takes all this crazy shit and makes it funny. And maybe they're preaching to the choir, but so what? Maybe that's what puts you to sleep at the end of all this lunacy and the tweeting, from Trump and all this stuff. And then you turn on one of these shows that you like, whatever one you like, and you see their slant on trying to make all this Seth Meyers, all this craziness, make it funny. And maybe ignoring it isn't going to cut it for a lot of people. Wow. And those shows are doing very well. So
that's the sugar that makes the medicine go down in a way, right? They're being able to laugh at it. Yeah.
Right. And by the way, for the other side, I always say this. Do your own show. They've tried it. They've tried to have their own sketch show. I wouldn't boycott it. Why can't they have their own show? Do your own show.
Interesting.
There's a lot of people out there that feel the same way you do. I'm sure you say that. You go, yeah, none of my friends, these late night shows, if they're right, and I underline if in circles, if they're right, and they go, they won't shut up. I mean, come on.
Well, isn't Roseanne...
Do your own show.
Isn't Roseanne sort of sympathetic with Trump?
That's not a talk show. I'm in the talk show realm. Okay. I'm saying, why don't they do their own talk show?
Yeah.
Put it up Fox, do a late night talk show.
Dennis Miller tried to be Republican.
Why has it never worked? Yeah. And by the way, I'm not talking about me liking it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to guess why it doesn't work. And by the way, I think I have an answer to why it doesn't work. Okay. When the other side tries to do a sketch show, or why can't they have a late night show? Why can't they?
Yeah.
Why can't they have a late night show? And why, even if I don't like it, who cares? I don't mean for me. I have what I would want. Why can't they do a show for them? Why isn't everybody that supports Trump going,
right?
let's do our own show. Why the fuck? Why aren't they mad at? Why are they mad at the other people? Why? If I was them, I would go, what the fuck is it with Fox? There's tons and tons and tons of people that don't want to fucking hear it, or they want to hear someone defend Trump. They want to hear maybe they don't even want to hear somebody not talk about it either. Maybe there are those people.
You're talking about a real time with Bill Maher, but it's the opposite. It's like the opposite Star Trek universe where Spock had a beard.
Yeah. Right. Whether it's the opposite of Bill Maher on the other side, which I guess would be Mike Huckabee's show,
right.
or whether it's the opposite of a talk show, they've never worked. They've never worked. Now, I'm not saying I didn't like them. For anybody that's listening that might be a Trump supporter or is going, well, you didn't like it. No. I can go, I don't like that show, but the numbers are great. Numbers. Why don't they ever work? And believe me, it's not because anything other but the numbers aren't there. So, I don't know, be mad at Fox. All those people that wish all those guys would shut up.
Maybe the Republicans go to bed at 9.
No, well, there's so many mad ones that... No, I don't think that's true. I think they just... I don't know. I know the answer, but I'd rather not guess it. But because if I guess why, I could be wrong. But what I'm not wrong about is they've never worked. Their sketch show, how come there hasn't been? They've tried it. They always think my family literally asked me, a cousin, are they not allowed to voice the other side? And I know for a fact that they're allowed to do whatever they want. And I think what it is, it's like when people say, like, oh, everybody lives in a bubble. L.A., they live in a bubble. New York, they're in a bubble. College students today, they live in their bubble. What bubble? The bubble that has a lot of different groups of people in it: white, black, gay, straight, transgender, rich, poor, fat, thin. What bubble? Maybe a bubble of decency. So we know what it's like. We know what our words mean because we have friends that are affected by those words. So maybe it's just that. So for a sketch show, do another show. I want the answer to that. I want someone to tell me why that's never worked. What their perception of it is, because the sketch show has never worked. They've tried it.
Find us on Twitter @thatarcher, our podcast page, tmi.twxnet.com. Rate the show on iTunes. It changes the way the show is listed.
'64 is when you're born. You started comedy when you were 16. You've been doing it for 37 years. And you started in 1980. So the obvious question is, what would that have been like in 1980? I'm just thinking what I was doing in 1980.
Well, I didn't do very well in school in 1980. I started in, I think, 81. Mm-hmm. But in 1981, I was in 11th grade, and I didn't do very well in school. But that's when I liked school, though, because I'd made a lot of friends, finally. And but I didn't do very well, and I think my parents were thrilled that I started to fall in love with stand-up comedy. I don't think they knew I could do it as a career, but I went down to a place called the Comedy Works. That back then there wasn't a comedy club in every city. There was starting to be in 81, or maybe 80. I went down in 1980 in 10th grade. Me and my friends went down. We heard about a comedy club in Center City, Philadelphia called the Comedy Works. And we saw everybody there. Now, they weren't as big as they are now, but we saw everybody from, like, Stephen Ryder, Gilbert Gottfried, Richard Lewis, Paul Reiser, Roseanne, Tim Allen, Jerry Seinfeld, Gary Shandling, Jay Leno, Mike Binder, Rich Hall. The list goes on and on and on and on and on and on. And I fell in love with it. And then, I'd hear every week when we went to see the professional shows, hey, if you think you're funny, at the end of the show, come on by Wednesday night. It's our open mic night. Yeah. And I went by and, the whole world opened up for me.
Did you think that you were doing it on a dare or starting a career?
No, I wasn't doing it either. I mean, look, I think it sounds so cheesy, but it's a great question. You're like, I once said to somebody, this will tie right back to what you just said. I've never ran a marathon. I've never really, trained for something or did this. And my friend goes, you moved to LA and did stand up.
Yeah.
And I went, what? I'm not going to be modest and go, oh, that's not the same. I took it. I went, I did do that. But when you do it, you just do it. because you want to do it. You don't think about it. And I just knew I loved stand-up. I never thought, like when I did my first open mic night, I didn't even think about it. I just did it. I remember a doorman, Tony Molino, said, because a big deal was get a weekend. That was like the first thing, to get a weekend. You know, you MC on Wednesday and your first thing is to MC on a weekend show. And I MC'd on a weekend show, and Jay Leno was there. And he was a big deal then. And he was, you know, just, even though I do pick on Jay Leno, some current things, he was so funny. Yeah. He annihilated, and he was nice and approachable, and he came with his wife Mavis, and they couldn't have been any nicer. And I MC'd that weekend, 350 packed people. And I remember Tony Molino, before that happened, he goes, "You're going to get a weekend. You're going to get a weekend," the doorman. And I thought, I wish he knew what he was talking about. You know what I mean? Because I didn't think, like, that was unfathomable to get a weekend. And I just went down, and then I did it. And by the way, at open mic night, my world opened up for me. I met other comedians, new comedians, and I met friends. And I felt like I found who I wanted to be around. All these open mic night comedians and going out afterwards. It made me have a life. But I never thought, oh, I'm going to do this the rest of my life. But I did. And I think that's why comedy, if I'm going to be overly maudlin, comedy's been good to me. You know, it's been good to me, not only emotionally, but financially. And you know what I mean? It's made me my living. And that's why I try to respect it.
I think the early days of a comedian appear to be, it's like a blue-collar trade. There's not a lot of thanks in it. There's not a lot of glamour in it. It's a grind, and you have to travel, and it seems like very difficult work. At some point, it becomes a white-collar creative class.
Yeah, I think everybody's perception is their reality, including you and including me. And I think there'd be a lot of comedians that would, especially comedians that are making their money doing stand-up still. You know what I mean? They're still out there doing their stand-up. You know, would say that, yes, financially it's easier when you can fly first class, let's say, when you can fly. But guess what? It's still, I don't think it's ever a good comedian, or even a comedian I don't like, a white collar. It's still, you're still getting on a plane, and you're still going there, and you're still doing shows, and you're still, even if you're doing theaters. You know, I've been on tour with people that are doing 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 seat theaters. Even, you know, I've done Madison Square Gardens a few times with Jim Gaffigan, with Louis C.K., and guess what? You're still coming in, getting backstage, getting off a bus, checking into a hotel, doing a show, getting back on a bus, getting back on a plane, getting up in the air, going back down in another city. Yeah. So does it get easier? Of course. I'm not. If I defy that, I won't bring anybody with me. But I always think it's always. And by the way, that's what's beautiful about it. I'm not complaining about it. It's the drudge of it. You know.
Well, that's how you know you're working.
Yeah, and you're out there in front of an audience. And you know what? It reminds me of something a long time ago. When I was like 18 years old, I opened up for George Jones at this place, the Valley Forge Music Fair. I was probably 18 or 19. And when I was getting off stage, he was coming on in the sort of in the galley that goes, you know, to the stage. And I stopped by where he was waiting and being held. So and he goes, "How are they?" to me. Yeah. And I said, I remember thinking, he cares how they are. And then I realized now, all these years later, you always care. You always go, how's the crowd? So a lot of it never changes, you know. And that's why I think, you know, even though I've been doing comedy for, you know, a long time, when I hang out with newer comedians, they might not be able to do what I do on stage yet, but off stage, they're comedians. Yeah. Even if it's a brand new comedian, he's been doing it for a year, but he's gotten on stage 100 times. We got everything to talk about.
What are you going to do if California slides off out into the ocean? Where are you going to move? Where would you go?
Yeah. And I thought about that. Yeah. Matter of fact, I've thought about it even from a little less perspective of like, it doesn't slide off. Right. But what do I do when it's like, it's the earthquake? I live. Everything's fine with me. But it was bad. Even my house, you know, like, you know, there's some serious damage to the house. The garage collapses. Thank God, pretty much everyone, you know, that type of thing. What would I do? Yeah. and I think I'd have to move to New York.
Oh. Yeah.
I mean, I could tour and live in any city. There's some great comedians that live in, not New York or LA, but I want to be near other comedians. I want to go out at night and always be near a ton of comedians. I want to go to the Improv in LA. Whenever I'm bored, I go over there. I know, and no matter what night it is, no matter what night in the past 25 years, no matter what night, I'm 10 minutes away from being near comedians that I love. Every night when I walk into the Improv, because that's the home club, I'm going to see people I love, comedians. I'm going to walk in within 3 seconds, what's up, and then be having a great time. So I'd have to live in New York or LA, but believe me, I've thought about it. But for now, I love LA.
Are comedians mean to other comedians? Like, you guys have to have a thick skin. You said you don't. But, I was trying to get at that table, the mean table, the nice table, the dirty table, the clean table.
Well, I think perception, like I said before, and I think I heard that term somewhere, but I loved it. Everybody's perception, including me, I'm not being flippant, everybody's perception is the reality. And whenever I hear comedians say, it's a cutthroat business out there, comedians are really cutthroat, I think, I'm not saying it's a horrible person that says that, but the way you get love is you give it. So if you're thinking it's a cutthroat business, I would ask, well, do you throw out love? Or hey, that was a good set, guy? Do you go out of your way to text someone, hey, by the way, I saw your set last night, and throw a lot of love out? Because, yes, there is a group of people with anything, teachers, comedians, doctors, whatever it is. There's two types of people.
But I mean shit talk. Shit talk.
Well, yeah, you know what?
Picking on each other out of love.
Picking on each other out of love.
Yeah.
But there's such a gray area with that.
Yeah.
I'm all right with being picked on, but I don't want to be picked on like a bully would pick on me in high school. Right. I'm all right. In other words, I don't like, I love you guys. And this answers your question of being picked on. The guys that go, I love you. And you want to go, no, how do I know you love me?
Right.
But if I have friends, and I do have plenty of these friends, and we throw around a lot of love, I go, well, I asked somebody once, why do I love it when this person picks on me? Why do I love it? My friend goes, because they don't pick on you or what you're most insecure about. They do better than that. They don't have to pick the low-bearing fruit that some asshole bully in high school could have picked on you. How clever are you if you're just a bully, with a microphone or off stage even? So if somebody is loving and giving and affectionate, then they could pick on me. Andy Kindler picks on me. James Adomian picks on me. Eddie Pepitone picks on me. Rory Scovel picks on me. But it's not about the shit I'm insecure about. And that's the type of comedians I like to hang around. I can be picked on. I can be picked on till I'm on the floor crying because it's so funny. But I'm not going to pick on my other comedians. And I think that's the group I don't want to hang out with. That they're like, they're just always like bullies hanging out. No, I don't. And by the way, everybody can find the group that works for them. But I will tell you that when you find that group, the group I've found, not only do they not pick what I'm most insecure about myself, they're loving and they're supportive. So whenever you think comedians aren't supportive, I'm telling you, you have, not you in the universe, you have to go, wow, like, unless Todd's wrong and there's only one group and they're overwhelmingly, let's say there's some nice guys out there, but overwhelmingly comedians are backstabbers. It's not true. There's a reason you're not hanging out with that other group. Maybe you're not giving it because there are a ton of supportive comedians that are happy. When I see other new comedians, I get jealous sometimes, especially when a comedian that's been doing it 5 years surpasses me in his career. I get jealous, but I turn that jealousy into motivation because there are so many supportive comedians. There really are, that are happy to see other people do well. And their instincts are, when they see another act do good, they want to help them. That's what I experienced in my 35 years of comedy.
Who would you hate to follow?
Well,
like, would you be okay with Joey Coco Diaz and then Todd Glass?
Well,
would
Joey
that work?
Coco Diaz, it's funny.
Yeah,
he would. Yeah, by the way, yes, what a great example. What made you bring up him?
Well, I'm a huge fan of all you guys.
Oh, Joey, I worked with in Minneapolis. You know what? I would follow him because he'd make me work harder.
Right.
He'd make me work harder because he's a bona fide headliner himself. But he would make me work harder. I would follow like a Rory Scovel or like someone like, like Liza Skinner. Like, I'm sure for her on the road, that crowd would love her.
Yeah.
But it make me work harder. But I don't like to follow, and I won't, people that are punching the wrong people.
Okay.
That's what I hate to follow the most.
Yeah.
Like when you're up there making subtle jabs at the wrong group, or even let's say they're all coming to see me, and I have someone opening for me. I don't want my crowd to have to sit through mean comedy.
Yeah.
I don't like to call it mean. I like to be more specific. Taking jabs at the wrong group.
Yeah.
So that's what I hate following the most, and that's why I'm very particular about who opens for me. Because I want them, but I want someone good to open for me. I don't mind. I love when an act, you're like, whew, they're really killing out there tonight. Good. Makes me go up and be on, work harder. But that's what I hate to follow the most. Well, you know what I always say about these conversations, so I don't come off aloof or flippant. A lot of times I say, people should do this and people should do that. I'm reminding myself.
Yeah.
I've slipped. I always say that. Like, I do things in the past I wish I wouldn't have done. I'm never looking to micromanage anybody's career or anybody's being. We all make mistakes. God knows someone could look through my arsenal of work and go, oof, what's he talking about? Look at this.
This is something you really talk about a lot, is being on the right side of history. And I wonder, could we go find a bit of a set that you did 15 years ago?
Yes. And
how do we forgive people who've been on the wrong side of history? What does that person have to do? Yeah.
Well, now you open up a whole other can of worms, but I love to talk about it because, no, it's okay. Because I'm glad I mentioned that. Because it's like, of course I have. But let's say on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being the most egregious. You think, isn't that what you want to talk about, the 10? No. 10 would be going back and watching Andrew Dice Clay or Eddie Murphy. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't think anybody's going to watch that now and go, you couldn't do that anymore. I think hopefully they'd go, ooh, good. Because that was not just comedy you didn't disagree with. That was just hate speech. Go back and look at that stuff. And but that's an egregious form. That forget about that. Let's say on a scale from 1 to 10, it's even a 4. If I could put it on a ridiculous scale to make my point. Let's say it's a 4. I don't have anything in my past like that. Like fuck that group or fuck this group but even a 4, light, it doesn't age well. So maybe because I've been doing comedy a long time, hopefully I want to, pick on the right people because I hope it's from my heart. I hope it's because I know what it's like to be judged by something from outside the content of your character, and I just don't want to perpetuate to the next group. Hopefully it's because of that. But if it's a little bonus that it doesn't age well. Now, for anybody that wants to know what I mean, go buy the Evening at the Improv box set of old comedians, like from the last. And by the way, I'm not shitting on them. There's brilliant comedians on there that even they probably watch it. So me, I watched a few things.
Yeah, so this is late 80s, well. You mean, right?
Yeah, it doesn't age well.
Yeah.
It doesn't age well. But then you go watch comedians. They might not have been talking about social issues. I'm not talking about comedians that just talk about politics and social issues. But the social things come up indirectly. I wouldn't say a comedian in 1980 that put in fake buck teeth and did an impersonation of a Chinese person. That's not a political comedian. That's not a social comedian. That's a silly comedian, but still you make social mistakes. So I'm not looking to go, oh, fuck that group, because I've made mistakes. So how do you forgive them? I think it's by how you grow. And what your new work is, always take a look at someone's new work. If they grew, that's what we want. But I will tell you this. When you ask me about someone like Richard, not Richard Pryor, when you go back and look at someone like Eddie Murphy's work, or you go back and look at some of Andrew Dice Clay's work, well, so what? Why can't he have grown? Yeah. I've never heard him talk about it. And I think if you realized how damaging what you did was, you've mentioned it. And maybe I'm wrong. Someone could forward me the YouTube clip that went, man, when I watch that, it's so embarrassing. It's so, I have a different relationship with the words that come out of my mouth. But forgive that person in a heartbeat. That's what we want. We want people to grow. And when people grow, we need to reward them and forgive them, of course.
When I watched Andrew Dice Clay in the early 90s, I didn't come off thinking that it was okay to be like Andrew Dice Clay. I thought that he illustrated by acting out a character who had those views that we tend to not want to think about. And the same could be true of Archie Bunker. Did he reinforce more Archie Bunkers to be like him, or did he illustrate that there are people like that, and this is how they are?
I got it. No, let me just so I get it right. And I got an extra 10 minutes to get closure on this if you do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And by the way, these are my opinions.
Yeah.
These are my opinions.
Yeah, yeah.
By the way, I like to be very clear with my opinions. There are people that don't even think that Archie Bunker was done in a good way. Let's put that aside.
Yeah.
I think Norm Macdonald is one, that he doesn't buy the whole, but Michael Stivic was there to be the other guy.
Right.
But let's put that aside. I always say that if someone's listening, that I represent them. So they're like, he knows that there are people that, but let's put that aside. There is still a gigantic difference. And by the way, I want to find out your stance before I combat it to make sure.
Well, I actually found I was raised by a single mother, a women's rights degree in women's studies. I mean, I was raised in a liberal family with a powerful woman, professional.
Right, I get.
So watching Andrew Dice Clay was, in a way, was a breath of fresh air because he was saying things that couldn't possibly be said. But the way I took them was this identifies this as a character who's everything about them you reject. So that's my stance on it. Did I clarify that? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not. But you compared it to. I should take the aggressiveness out of my voice. I think that's only there because I think the comparison was way off. So you're comparing Archie Bunker. First of all, I'm being a little bit cocky here to you in a loving way. I want to make sure I understand what you say because I don't. Sometimes when you sort of bring you clarify what somebody said as being maybe wrong or a bad comparison.
Yeah.
Then they go back. You are comparing the two, and why I read that's not a good comparison is when Archie Bunker. Even though I know there's people that don't think it was done well, a small group, there was Michael Stivic there, and in that time that it was necessary, there were people like Archie Bunker, and all people that have those views and use those words are not monsters. And I include that today. My friends that are supporting Donald Trump, they're not monsters. If you met them, you would love them. There's people that just don't realize that their words and their actions perpetuate negative on a lot of people. But they're not monsters. They're everything else about them. It's like someone goes, no, but if you met my mom, you'd love her. If you met my dad, you'd love them. So Archie Bunker, that character was done, but there were a lot of people that argued with Archie. And gave the other side of it, and it gave that to be a topic to be discussed. Now, when people say you couldn't do that Archie Bunker show today, I think Norman Lear said good, which I loved that he said that. We have new things to talk about. We don't need to have a show where we discuss that anymore. Hopefully we put that behind us. But Andrew Dice Clay said, there's no faggots. I'm gonna do it because I want you to remember. And I know you didn't agree. I get it. You're not saying you agreed with what he said. You disagreed with everything he said. I get it. But you thought it was refreshing, basically. And I'm not being flippant, but I want you to remember. I just played it on my podcast. Yeah, there's no faggots here. In San Francisco they have faggots. In Brooklyn there's no faggots. They're hanging from a tree.
Right.
Big laugh. Yeah, because they're always marching around. Give us money for AIDS. Give us money for AIDS. Yeah, really, butt slammer? I want money for a new car. Get a fucking job, butt slammer.
Yeah.
Now, you either have to take a pause, and look, good, loving people. When you rehear that, do you want to still feel like, I didn't say you shouldn't be able to say it, by the way. So let's be very clear with that. Everybody should say what they want to say. But do you think that's refreshing?
No, you've picked a couple bad examples. I guess I'm thinking of the funnier bits, but yes, no, I get it. I get why it's wrong. It's at the time it seemed that, again, and I'm coming from Toronto's a cosmopolitan city, and there was intense political correctness even back then, and there was nobody else talking shit like Andrew Dice Clay, and so it did chime as being.
Wouldn't there have been better examples of something that was refreshing, even if you didn't agree with it? Like maybe, who knows back then, like I can't think of examples now. I should be able to, but with 3 minutes of research on the internet, we'd be able to come up with better examples.
Yeah.
But that was, you got to say to somebody that like, that's not comedy. You can go, well, Todd, you just don't agree with it. And by the way, I always go out of my way to right here, jam in. I'm not saying he shouldn't have been able to say it, but people that didn't realize how much negativity that perpetuated, how many lives that made hard. There were a lot of people in the audience that they heard it. There were people that probably were in the crowd going, "Oh my God, This is not bad comedy. This isn't even comedy. It's not a well-crafted joke that you disagree with. But there were people in that audience that did disagree. But nobody left, nobody emailed, nobody walked out quietly, because I think that's what smart people do when they walk out quietly. They don't yell. That's a brilliant person disagreeing. They go, no, my power is that I can leave and never watch this comedian again, but I quietly leave. You don't boo. I get it's tempting. But you don't boo, you don't yell. You never support them, you leave, you don't applaud, and you quietly leave the room. I'm sure there were people that did that. But I bet a lot of people that didn't agree with that didn't realize, well, this hurts a lot of people. Like, I don't want to do that again. I don't want to perpetuate that, even if it's not as egregious as what he did. So that's, that's why today I'm very careful with my words, because even if it's not, if he's a 10, I don't even want to be a 2.
Yeah.
So as I do comedy, I go, be very careful with what you say. Be very careful. Words are powerful, and say what you mean. And it's okay to offend people. You shouldn't try to. I don't mind offending people. I just don't want to offend the brilliant ones.
Well, it is interesting, the examples of comedy that from the past, like Eddie Murphy.
I brought up, Andrew Dice Clay. There were things that were said about women back then. China. I remember a long time ago, me and my comedian friends stood around and go, why do only white people come to comedy clubs?
Huh.
And we were not stupid. But talk about the lesson to be learned when something's right under even a smart person and you don't see it. Yeah. Well, I'm not crazy. I know those things have to be happening today, too. Of course, including me. Right under your nose, you don't smell it. By the way, some of those bits that were bad, I would recommend. I'm so glad I remember to always say this, because I always forget it. That bit where they would put buck teeth in their mouth and do a Chinese person talking, I would ask the comedian to do it. And I wasn't a moron. So the only lesson that could be learned is, okay, I don't want to do that again. I wasn't bad for doing it back then, but I don't want to do it again. So I think about what I say. And we would sit around and go, why do only white people come to comedy clubs? Overwhelmingly. Go back and look at the old Evening at the Improv from the 80s, and you go, oh my God, were we idiots? How could we sit around and ask ourselves that? One bit after the next bit after the next bit. And we're like, no wonder.
Yeah.
So I think that's the lesson I want to learn for myself, is like, by the way, I don't stop doing jokes because of PC. I think there's a lot of people that say everyone's so PC and they're PC. I don't think, if you stop using the word retarded because from your heart, let's say you used it from your heart, you just went, wow, I can think of a better adjective. I can, that's not PC. And from your heart means you just did it. And a lot of people drop that, including me. I used that word 10 years ago. I just slowly got it out of my vocabulary once somebody beautifully and kindly explained to me. I didn't drop it out as a pressure. There was no pressure. Just like when my parents said, say please, say thank you, not to inhibit my speech, but to make my speech beautiful. So I didn't drop that out of my act. But if you use that word privately, but you stopped using it in your act, you're PC. And I think a lot of people claim themselves being warriors. But no, I don't. That's why I say, with all this PC shit going on, I've said it a million times. I'll keep it short. I'm not talking about PC. I'm just talking about, is couples counseling PC? If you go to couples counseling with your significant other and you learn about each other, do you go, oh my God, now I gotta be PC? Is that what you call it?
Well, sometimes we just need things explained to us, right?
We need things explained to us, and we need to see the path that it breathes. I didn't connect that guy putting teeth in his mouth, or a comedian singing a song parody that was so disparaging to black people, that I didn't connect it with the damage that it causes. So when you can take the joke and lead it to where it causes pain to people, then you go, then you understand it. So believe me, I'm not dropping things out of my act under pressure. I do whatever I want on stage, anything. It's just I've learned, that looks, maybe that looks bad. I wish I wouldn't have done that joke. So when you say, how do you forgive? You forgive people by what their new work is. Right. Always look at someone's new work as they grew and they changed. No, I'm not saying go back and watch that box set you're going to see some great comedians there that you go, it's like, you don't even have to tell anyone. Like, there was a kid on my podcast, he's 20 years old, and he watched it with me. And I did not sit him down to watch him to prove my point of, look what was going on.
Yeah.
But believe me, I'm not delusional, including me. You either have to think, oh, that shit doesn't happen anymore. Of course it does. And like I said, the group we have to look at the most is not the 10s, like Andrew Dice Clay and that stuff being like a 10 of, to me, wrong.
It's the subtle.
2s, 3s.
Yeah.
What?
No, it's the subtle use of what are now. Yeah.
It doesn't age well.
Yeah. You guys were doing Snagglepuss on a recent episode of the Todd Glass Show. And I thought, I forgot about Snagglepuss. And I'm trying to figure out him. Like, is he a little gay, and he's a little, theatrical, and he's a little bit.
I know.
What is that guy?
I don't know, but you know what? It's so funny. Maybe he's just Snagglepuss. Mm-hmm. I thought about that because I thought, is this wrong?
Yeah.
But no, because you can be theatrical and flamboyant and still be loving and kind and decent. There are theatrical. There are flamboyant people. There's flamboyant people. Typically in the past, those flamboyant people we thought ended up being gay. But I think as straight people get comfortable in their sexuality and who they are, we find, oh, it's not as black and white as we thought it was.
Well, I'm interested in the voice actor who did that voice and which characters he was drawing together to make Snagglepuss.
Yeah, that's so funny. Only you would think of that, because I did too while we were doing it. I'm like, wait, is this exactly what we're talking about?
Yeah.
Was that character done mean-spirited?
Right.
Or was that character done with love?
Exit.
And,
Stage right. All right. Already. Even. You know.
Yeah.
I remember it stuck in my head. Yeah.
He's like 22 years old. I'm like, John, how do you know Snaggle?
Right.
What was his name?
Snagglepuss.
Snaggletooth?
Snagglepuss.
Yeah.
Which is political. Is that okay? Snagglepuss? I mean, it's pretty, it's out there. But fun.
But there we go. There it lies.
So tonight's show, here's another question. So there was this really great documentary on Gilbert Gottfried that was very revealing about his life and progression. And one of the things that was shown in that, is he's on his way to doing these venues, and he looks very, worried and concerned and depressed. And he says that as he does more stand-up, he doesn't lose the stage fright. In fact, it gets worse and worse. And I'm thinking about that because you'd think that the more of it you do, the more hardened you would become or used to it. And then I thought to myself, well, actually, every time you did it, you'd want to do it better. And so actually the stakes might be higher. How do you don't appear to even be capable of stage fright. How does it play with you?
No, I get it depends where it is, but I relate with that. And by the way, Gilbert Gottfried is somebody that the first time I saw when I was 17 years old, I was banging the table. It was so funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, I relate with that. We're going through different situations. Obviously, if I'm in a club that I love and I know the crowds are great, I get anxious to go on.
Okay.
But no, I still get nervous. It never goes away. And I think that's a good thing, because you're right. It keeps you, you're not going to improve unless you're a little nervous, So nerves can be good. You can make them work for you.
Find us on Twitter @thatarcher. Send us an email, archer@twxnet.com. For guest links and contact info, visit our podcast page, tmi.twxnet.com. Find us on Android and Apple Podcast apps. Subscribe and rate the show on iTunes.
I'm Dave Archer in Toronto.
And I'm Todd Glass in New York City on a treadmill at the gym. Sorry for all the background noise. Watch my Netflix special, Act Happy.